Da, guck, Johannes, es geht direkt los. Du bist ein Prophet. Die fackeln alles ab und holen das Kupfer raus, weil es am einfachsten geht. Das Gold bleibt an deren Anoden Schlamm, weil sie nicht genug Leckersäure haben.
I have stated that the poor people of Africa cannot manage Europe or America's waste. If we all belong to a global community, then why will any government sit down and watch this hazardous waste being transported or exported to a poor country like Africa? For me, I see it as a deliberate attempt by the West to dump obsolete technology and hazardous materials on Africa because they think that the solution in their respective countries are more expensive and it's cheaper to bring it down here to Africa. And so I get really angry because if e-waste is hazardous waste, then somebody must pay for its management. And if you're not ready to pay and rather dump it on somebody else, then you are not being fair. When you have such massive smoke from e-waste burning, I mean, for such a long time, there is definitely going to be human health consequences. I mean, you can guess by just mere looking at it that about 70% of the people who are impacted by these e-waste activities are women and children. They are in the majority of people who come here. Some really have nothing to do with the e-waste, but we must begin to think more carefully so that one day another generation will not rise up and say it is the West that have killed developing countries. Situations like this must not be allowed to continue.
Das erinnert mich an diesen Müllberg, der seinen eigenen Namen hat in Indien, ne? Wo unten quasi die ganze Batteriesäure und der ganze Scheiß rausläuft und dann da in der Stadt, die direkt an diesem Müllberg dran ist, alle mit Krebs verseucht. Ich vergesse immer den Namen. Wir hatten den schon ein paar Mal genannt. Jangipura oder so.
This is Agbogbloshi, a scrapyard in Accra, Ghana. Alongside Chernobyl, it is ranked as one of the most toxic places on the planet. The dismantling of electronic waste, or e-waste, is done by men, women, and even children. They work to extract valuable materials from items we discard. It is a toxic and harmful process, both to the people and to the environment. But the rate of production and disposal of electronic items is increasing every year, and more of these unregulated sites are appearing all across the world. They are the face
Ja, aber wir brauchen unbedingt das Wachstum, ist doch klar.
of our growing e-waste crisis. To understand how we got here and how we might solve this growing problem, we must go back to the beginning.
Zeigen Sie erstmal schön Manhattan.
What we saw in the 20th century is this huge, rapid increase in consumption, in the development of technology.
Ach so, ja, ob das K-Wort hier passiert. Also, es klingt so, als wäre das eine englische Doku, ne? Ich muss sagen, ganz schön frech von Arte, dass sie einfach eine englische Doku machen. Also, kaufen. Ob sie das C-Wort droppen.
In the development of retail outlets, in the development of the ways we shop. If you go right back to, again, to the beginning of the 20th century, you will see that most things were advertised, for example, on their longevity. This will last a long time. This will do the job that you expect it to do. Today, we wouldn't expect that. In fact, we probably wouldn't even expect some things to last a long time.
If someone had said to me 10 years ago, right, you'll have a laptop which does internet, phone, you can watch films on it, you'll have a phone which does all of that stuff as well, but you can make phone calls, and then that won't be quite enough, so you'll need something that fits in between those, so you'll need the tablet that does most of all of those things. I wouldn't have believed them. But we've got increasing IT, and that's happening in the developing world as well.
Take the cell phone. In 2011, almost 500 million were made. 2 years later, that number had doubled to 1 billion. Today, there are more operational cell phones on the planet than people. But eventually, all cell phones break. In 2014, we produced 42 million tons of e-waste globally.
So etwas Schönes. Ich suche gleich
That's
nochmal
about
raus.
400 of the world's largest aircraft carriers, or 115 Empire State Buildings, or 7 times the weight of the Great Pyramid at Giza.
Hier, ich blende es nochmal schnell ein für euch. Da. Das ist das wichtige Bild. Das muss man haben. Cattle Decapitation. Die Anthropocene Extinction. Das ist das Bild, was man vor Augen haben muss. Mein persönliches Lieblingsalbum. Fühlt ihr das? Da, das ist ganz herrlich.
Ghana has huge import of second-hand electronics. And the last studies that was carried out indicated that 70% of all imports of electronic and electrical appliances are second-hand. So already that is huge. And even within the 70%, 20%, almost 20%, is coming as
Capitalism
junk.
natürlich.
And these ones go to the dump sites or the scrapyard at Agogloshi, where they are taken through environmentally hazardous means to retrieve precious metals. Added to this is lack of employment for our youth. And so because there are precious metals that they can actually sell and make some money out of it, a lot of young people go into this hazardous business just to make income for themselves. And so these are the multiple facets of problems that we have with electronic waste in general, not only in Accra, but in Ghana as a whole.
I started the job with burning and dismantling. I was 17 to 18. The electronic is coming from the towns. We get it from some of the companies, houses and fitting shop. When they brought it from Europe, they will select the one is good and sell. The one is no good, they'll sell give us for scraps. So when you brought it here, you will dismantle it and remove the copper and then the wires and aluminum, the rest, you will burn it.
Mhm. Ja. Kleine fleißige Arbeiterbienchen.
We are a group of scrap dealers that have come together to form an association. We are called the Greater Accra Scrap Dealers Association. In our scrap yard, we deal in scrap metals, which is the copper, aluminum and the...
Ich kriege hier auch übelst starke Fallout-Vibes. Das wurde doch bei Fallout auch immer schon so abgebildet, ne?
other stuff. Automobile vehicles, big machineries from factories, computer parts, electronics like radio sets, televisions, and all other aspects
Keyboards.
of metallic objects.
Einfach nur ein Stapel
we
Keyboards.
are
Fuck.
interested in all that. Yes.
Alles schon sortiert.
You get everything here. They do all manner of recycling, which we don't have any formal industry doing. Apobloshi is how a lot of people live. You have over 3,000 people here who work at the scrap site. They don't have any kind of formal education. They need to survive. This is what they live on.
Today, the computers that we're using, our phones, our laptops, our tablets, are all about consumers using them to help them in their everyday lives and in their work lives. They're almost indispensable to those of us, particularly in the West.
I'm here to buy a new iPhone 6s. I have iPhone 6 at the moment, so I'm looking to get a new one. I've seen so many people standing here for 2 days.
I use it for my everyday life, texting, emailing, browsing the web, watching videos. It's like you don't even have to use your iPad anymore because it's so big.
I like the color. I was thinking to get the gold one,
Ja.
but I ended up getting the rose gold one. It's not as
Ist das
girlish as I
schön.
thought it's going to be. So yeah, I'm looking forward to set it up and start using.
Das ist der sogenannte Fortschritt, über den immer alle reden. Und das ist garantiert auch der sogenannte Fortschritt, über den die FDP redet, wenn sie meint Wettbewerb und Wachstum und Innovation und so.
Will you be back for the 7?
Yeah, probably. I mean, 6S wasn't as exciting as the 6, but I think 7 is going to be. I hope they'll bring something very interesting next year.
I think one of the most important things about technology is just how beautiful it is. Holding the latest phone, a tablet that is smaller
Ach
than
du
the previous
Scheiße.
one, they look beautiful. They
Fuck.
feel
Ja,
wonderful.
natürlich, wir haben ja jetzt schon über eine Dekade lang diesen Bullshit, ja. Das heißt, jetzt hat sich mittlerweile schon eine ästhetische Kategorie dafür herausgebildet. Ne? So wie garantiert gibt es jetzt schon Leute, die sich einen drauf abwichsen auf so ein Phone. Die jetzt wirklich ihren Schwanz dran reiben und so. 100% gibt's so einen Scheiß. Herrlich, oder? Fantastisch.
And indeed, I think it would be puritanical to say that we should be living our lives without what these items offer us, both in terms of the technology and also in terms of just how we feel about them. I think that the problem for companies at the moment actually is probably that consumers are not aware enough of what is involved.
Consumers sind never aware enough für irgendwas. Das ist ja der Grund, warum sie Konsumenten sind. Das ist gerade genau die Definition davon. Sie sind halt mindless. Mindless consumers.
In both the making of the technology that they're using and the sourcing and the recycling and reusing.
If you're looking at recycling in the UK, what would often happen is you might have some manual disassembly, but most things are shredded and then put through fairly high-tech equipment to recover all the different materials. However, if you go to developing countries, they don't have that high-tech equipment to recover the materials. So you'll have some elements of disassembly. And then in other cases, what they'll do is try and burn the plastics off because they find it hard to get to the metals that are attached to them.
It's a really nasty business. The things are designed, for example, not to burn. They have flame retardants in them. They have all sorts of chemical additives in there, which are functional. They do a job, both in the manufacturing process and when you're using it. But when you start taking it apart, when you start to burn it, for example, trying to get to melt the copper out or the gold, when you try and treat it with acids to try and leach out some of the materials you may want to gain, that's really bad news because you have no control over what's being released. It could be released as a smoke, it could be released as something in the acid, which then goes into the ground.
Ja.
The problem of this thing.
Das ist der dystopische Stoffwechsel, vor dem uns Väterchen Lenin oder so gewarnt hat.
It's just only the smoking. When you breathe it, evening time, you are not feeling well. You no go fit sleep. And it get fever again. When you breathe this in, the smoke, at least your chest, when you cough, it will be black.
Aha. Logisch.
Well, I have an interest in seeing how the environment and environmental change and human health all interact. My background being in toxicology for testing for new compounds. The team of Eli Film wanted to do an independent study to test if there is chemical contamination related to electronic waste dumping and processing in Ekbublushi.
Wieder so ein Ding, ne? Schon wieder so ein Ding. Jetzt gibt's Leute, die diese offensichtliche Scheiße noch nachmessen müssen. Wollen oder sollen. Warum eigentlich? Wozu? Ne? Es ist irgendwie, ja, ich weiß auch nicht. Also ich werde immer kritischer gegenüber diesem Datenschwachsinn.
As part of the study, I worked with Samson Atiemo at the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. Samson is a former school teacher and currently a researcher at the Commission, which is a governmental research station.
I was teaching in a secondary school when one time we had a letter from a Dutch company that I wouldn't want to mention the name, that they wanted to donate computers and other accessories to my school to support IT education. And we were so happy because we needed these electronic equipment at that time. They paid for the full cost, 2 40-foot containers from Netherlands right down to my hometown, Ekropon, where I was teaching. When we were testing the computers before distribution, we noticed about 80% of them were not working.
Ja,
and
genau.
We were surprised because how would the company pay all this money, send this junk equipment to us?
Ja,
That
warum
time I
bloß?
hadn't heard of e-waste, I didn't know what it was. So I spoke to other teachers from different secondary schools, and unfortunately, they also have the same sad story. In one case, none of the computers was working. But I just went onto the net and said, dumping useless computers to Africa, and I found so many information on e-waste, and that really pushed me into this e-waste research.
So these black areas used to be burning areas? So where are the new burners?
The new burners, that's what we,
Okay.
that's where we are moving towards.
Okay. But you see, what I'm wondering is there's pockets of people manually.
Disassembling.
Yes.
These guys dismantle anything, just bring it and they'll dismantle it for you. You can bring the latest Ferrari and they'll dismantle it. So this is typical e-waste dismantling activity going on. Okay. You can see they've dismantled almost everything. Now these guys who do the dismantling, they have the highest injury rate. Yeah, they have the highest injury rate. I mean, look at this guy hammering the compressor. Any slip of the hammer can result in fatal injury. Don't worry. Don't worry too much.
Why is he? That shouldn't be open, should it?
Gas will hold. Gas in him. What he's doing is potentially dangerous. That is why the colleagues are protesting.
Never do that.
It could be an LPG gas, or it could be, and you know there's fire here.
Ich habe hier auch diese Vibes von dieser Kobalt-Doku. Könnt ihr euch noch an die erinnern? Die Kobalt-Doku? Die ging auch los. Ging die nicht sogar auch in... Ich weiß nicht mehr, in welchem Land in Afrika die losging. In diesen Minen. Kongo, ja, stimmt.
I think what's surprising when you open up a mobile phone and you look at the circuit board through even a low-powered microscope is how tiny some of these components are. And because we demand more and more power and we demand smaller and smaller devices, the components themselves are getting to a really minuscule scale. Capacitors and resistors now are less than 1/3 of a millimeter across. So you're talking about getting close to the width of a human hair for some dimensions of some of these components. So this is a pretty old phone. This is relatively easy to take apart to a certain level, and then it gets tricky. So I've taken those screws out, but now what? Okay. Then we've got the electronics. You can see how they've started to corrode a little bit in this really old phone. Then the circuit board. You find in mobile phones there's a lot of shielding because there's a lot of obviously transmission of radiation as the thing transmits. This little motor is the thing that makes your phone vibrate, and this little weight at the top is actually made of a tungsten alloy because it's so heavy. Here we go. So that's some more of the circuit board, and under here
Ja, ist quasi mein Handy, ne?
is the gold. So wherever there are buttons, there's usually gold. And that's why smartphones are a little bit cheaper to make in some to some extent because they don't use all this gold as the contacts, because they simply don't have a keyboard and buttons. From this design, there's clearly been not much thought given to how you get the recyclable materials out of here, how you get the valuable materials out, maybe even how you get the toxic materials out. They're just too integrated with the design. Just common sense tells you that this is all rather difficult and probably not worth doing. If you're a recycler, you just want to throw this straight in a big recycling furnace maybe and just get the precious metals back. So one of the devices we've been able to use to look inside a mobile phone and find out what it's made of is something called an X-ray fluorescence gun. It's a device that uses X-rays to look inside materials, but it actually puts X-rays in and then it gets X-rays out. And by analysing the X-rays that come out, we can work out what it is that's inside that material. Okay, so we've got some of the parts from the deconstructed mobile phone.
Wie wird das funktionieren? Vielleicht mit dem K-Edge von den Metallen, und die haben alle unterschiedliche K-Edges, weil die ja unterschiedliche Metalle haben, und dann kann man irgendwie vielleicht sogar die räumliche Verteilung aus dem Backscatter irgendwie ermitteln, könnte ich mir vorstellen. Vielleicht funktioniert das so, ne? Spektrometrie, ja, aber Johannes, erklär mal. Also ich habe jetzt eine Röntgenquelle, ne? Die hat ja ein kontinuierliches Röntgenspektrum, das schicke ich da rein. Und das, was zurückgestreut wird, das sind ja Streuprozesse, die da stattfinden, ne? Und ich hätte jetzt angenommen, es gibt irgendwie bei Metallen garantiert so ein K-Edge irgendwo in diesem Bereich von irgendwo zwischen 20 und 100 Kilovolt oder so. Und dann sieht man das quasi, das Leuchten sozusagen besonders stark. Oder nee, quasi die Absorptionskante könnte man, ist ja eine Absorptionskante, ne? Die würde man wahrscheinlich dann, obwohl, man muss ja erstmal das, was zurückkommt, auch wieder energetisch auflösen, ne? Mit einem Röntgenfilm kann es nicht sein, weil der ja nicht, der integriert ja über alle Energien. Es muss also irgendwas sein wie ein Spektrometer, ne? Okay, und das muss sozusagen eine gute Energieauflösung haben, und in diesem Spektrometer, deswegen Spektrometrie, ne, kann man wahrscheinlich die K-Edge sehen. Und ich schätze mal, jedes Material hat eine spezielle K-Edge. Ja, genau, man misst die Verlustmessung, das würde ich auch sagen, ja. Ne, weil beim K-Edge wird besonders viel absorbiert. Abgeschwächt. Es muss ja nicht Absorption sein, ne? Es kann auch Streuung sein.
It's this kind of thing that we're interested in finding out what exactly is in there. It looks pretty simple, maybe just a piece of glass, but actually let's find out what goes into the making of this small component from the mobile
Vielleicht macht man eine
phone.
Röntgendurchleuchtung und gar nicht backscattern, sondern man leuchtet durch.
Okay, already it's starting to detect things like titanium and vanadium, manganese, nickel, phosphorus, antimony, chlorine, calcium, and so the list goes on. And what we thought was just a simple piece of glass screen turns out to be fairly complex. Glass mainly is made of silicon and oxygen, but we've got far more going
Ja, das ist klar. Also, dass diese komischen Touch-Oberflächen, dass das nicht kein normales Glas ist, ist auch klar, ne?
Has been functionalized. It's got reflective coatings, it's got to be electroconductive, it's got all sorts of functions that it needs to perform as a screen. And these elements all go into making that possible. Current recycling technology is limited. We can only retrieve some of the elements that we put into the waste stream in the first place. In e-waste, it's typically less than half the elements. The rest of them are never fully recovered. And so we are basically consuming and throwing away some of these very precious materials.
Some of the elements that are in electronics are fairly easy to recover, and other ones are in such small quantity that it's difficult or impossible. Anybody working to recover those materials is going to be looking for the highest value and the highest volumes of those. On an annual basis, we process about 35 million pounds of electronics a year. And a lot of it is the covered devices, TVs and monitors, that sort of thing, but then we also get printers, keyboards, mice, fax machines, desktop.
Es ist ein ganz fantastischer Albtraum, den wir uns da gebaut haben. Wirklich. Es ist einfach nur ein Albtraum. Und das hätten wir vor 20, 30 Jahren alles schon sehen können. Ne? Wir haben es schon vor 20, 30 Jahren gewusst, weil wir es beobachtet haben.
As well as large copy machines, all sorts of electronic devices. We're trying to create commodity streams out of this facility. So, and our commodities are the lead and non-lead bearing glass, shredded aluminum, shredded steel, shredded circuit boards, and those materials we send to downstream destinations and they do further processing.
In the U.S., just over a quarter of all e-waste is recycled in facilities like this.
Diese Stimme, das ist doch die Stimme vom Disco Elysium-Sprecher. Oder? Hat jemand... Wir machen einfach mal den Original-Sound an. YouTube Disco Elysium English Narrator.
Motor carriage. You can use it.
Something bad with a motor carriage. A dark lump rises in your throat.
Hört ihr das?
One in Seattle. They are classified as.
Ne, wenn man den ein bisschen runtertunt mit Autotune, also beziehungsweise einfach mit einem gescheiten Filter.
Nothing. It's probably nothing. Forget.
Ne?
The formal industry and have to comply with specific
das ist der 100%.
In developing nations, there is little formal industry. This means there is minimal regulation and therefore few safety standards.
I certainly understand how the informal sector is created. People need to make a living. They're doing what they can to survive, but I don't think that we need to, or I don't want to participate and send materials into that when I know full well there's better ways to manage the materials. I mean, there's short-term and long-term hazards. So the short-term hazards are you can cut yourself very badly. There's a capacitor in a television that you could
Christina,
potentially
guter Einwand. Wir gucken in den
There's other
Credits.
things that could happen on a short term, cuts and lifting hazards, those sorts of things. We work on ergonomics. And then there's the long-term hazards, exposure to metals over a period of time. We provide garments for our workers, safety shoes, steel-toed shoes, gloves, sleeve protectors, masks, glasses, screens, all sorts of safety gear for our employees. We expect them to leave those garments here so that they aren't laundering that material in their own laundry facilities. Instead, we're taking care of that, and if there are any potential materials on their clothes, they're left behind. We have hired third-party consultants to help us with air monitoring to ensure that we have a safe workplace. They work with our employees as far as exposure data for materials. We do standard hearing evaluation and other things like that for worker protection.
So you have a range of materials which are regarded, particularly in the EU, as toxic materials. Lead is one which most people would have heard of, but there are also cadmium, arsenic, which people are aware of as a poison, mercury, and there are others as well which can be detrimental to health. So as long as we control the amount that's released to the environment, and we do it in a well-controlled and environmentally friendly way, then we can deal with these elements which are, harmful to human health. But if you do it in an uncontrolled way, and if you release it to the environment, if it gets into the soil or into the air, then that can cause a problem.
They are burning those wires to get copper out and then sell them. We have to go a bit that way as well.
Yeah.
Into the smoke.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yes, promise.
Sure.
So in terms of the main chemicals that we tried to look at, we focused on heavy metals, and the 5 ones that we selected were lead, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, and mercury, which one way or the other have been reported to cause problems to humans.
Oh my God, this is ugly.
You go, you take deep shower with plenty of soap. Akela, this should go down as one of the most difficult sampling you have ever done.
Sie hätte sich aber auch schon mal eine ordentliche Maske besorgen können.
Trash as possible.
For the process of sampling, first of all, we collected soil ash samples. That's.
Als ich mal in Peking war, hatte ich einfach, also ich bin tagsüber da unterwegs gewesen und abends ist man komplett mit Mikropartikeln voll, weil der Smog einfach mal überall an einem dran klebt. Der ganze Rauch und Ruß, den hat man überall. Das ist richtig dolle.
The very top layer of soil, because it is also the air we breathe when dust comes off the ground.
There we solely for the commission. Security everywhere.
As soon as we collected the soil samples, we took them to the commission to air dry them so that all moisture goes away. We then sieved each soil sample into finer powder to get rid of little pieces of plastic or grass or whatever, and then weighed each sample to know how much we are using in the next step. The next step was to add acids to the soil to perform a reaction that is called acid digestion. This reaction allows the heavy metals to come out into solution, and then we can take those solutions to use at the final stage of the process, which is analysis and data collection. So we take those solutions, feed them into a detector, which in our case was an atomic absorption spectroscope, and then detect the concentration of heavy metals per gram. This is how we determined the levels of the 5 heavy metals we chose.
What was shocking, I suppose the hypothesis of our testing was that we will find contamination, but I did not expect to find contamination in that small sample size, and also in the disused areas, in the areas that are not directly involved with electronic waste, in order to make a very clear causal relationship between each heavy metal or each chemical towards a health problem. It takes a long time, and that's the whole field of toxicology. But you can take an idea.
Was für eine nutzlose Wissenschaft. Mann.
By other studies as well,
Wirklich.
Ours is consistent with those results to understand that there is something going on there.
Anytime I return from Agbogbloshie, I don't enter my house with anything I put on to Agbogbloshie. I more or less remove everything naked and walk straight to the bathroom. So that I don't touch anything in the house. I go straight to the bathroom, get myself washed down, and then make sure I put on protective clothing, soak my clothing for about 3 days before putting them in the washing machine. So that I don't.
Korrekt, Sie müssen vorher wissen, wonach Sie suchen. Ne? Sie haben sich jetzt auf 5 Metalle mehr oder weniger bauchgefühlmäßig danach gesucht. Ne? Das Ergebnis ist ja, okay. Es ist nicht gesund, ne? Super. Super, super. Das ist, dafür studiert man dann 20 Jahre im Prinzip. Und ja.
Don't cross-contaminate anybody in my house because I'm worried about the huge pollution at the site.
The problems associated with toxic materials are not new to us. There are international treaties that aim to control their transport, use, and disposal. As e-waste contains toxic materials, it is classified as hazardous. The main treaty covering hazardous substances is called the Basel Convention.
So I'm Jim Puckett. I'm the founder and director of the Basel Action Network. The Basel Action Network gets its crazy name from a United Nations Convention about trying to help developing countries protect themselves from hazardous waste dumping by rich developed countries.
Ja,
it was unique.
funktioniert auf jeden
environmental
Fall.
treaty which was driven and basically authored by developing countries.
Seht ihr, er hat jetzt einen Zettel. Er hat einen Zettel dafür bekommen. Ja, ja. Ich sage ja immer. Es geht hier vor allem darum, wie mächtig jemand ist. Dann kann er das einfach machen. Das spielt dann keine Rolle mehr mit den Zetteln.
Extremely important that it gets ratified, particularly by the countries that it needs to apply to the most, the highest waste producing countries. And the United States per capita produces the most waste of any country in the world.
Korrekt, Schröck. Die ganze Neoklassik dient nur zu diesem einen Zweck, eine intellektuelle Legitimationsgrundlage für Ausbeutung bereitzustellen. Genau das ist es.
Over 170 parties, all of the European Union, Australia, Canada, Japan, etc., are all parties to it, but the United States refuses to ratify it. And there's only 2 countries in the world that signed it in Basel, Switzerland, when it was first adopted, that never ratified it, and that's Haiti and the United States.
Was dasselbe ist quasi, ne?
Once something is exported from the United States and is on its way on a boat to China, as soon as it gets out of our territorial waters, it becomes criminal traffic.
Mhm.
Okay, it's Tuesday, June 23rd, 2015 at 11:22 in the morning, in Paramount, California. We have a CRT monitor going to Atan Recycling Corporation at 13941 Norton Avenue, Unit D in Chino, California. So with every item, I will disable it somehow so it's not usable. And pull the main power. So now this monitor is no good. We want it to be waste. We don't want it to be reusable. So that we can state down the road that, yes, this item was a waste product. And if the recycler says, oh, no, we sent it for reuse, we tested it. It's like, I have footage of me destroying the monitor.
Ja, das ist wichtig, ne? Noch mehr Datenmüll erzeugen, den eigentlich niemand braucht, ne? Noch mehr Datenmüll erzeugen. Und es ist natürlich auch so eine Frage der Kompetenzen, ob man irgendwas nochmal verwenden kann oder nicht. Wenn man so einen ollen DDR-Bastler fragen würde, der würde da vielleicht sogar noch irgendwie was mit anfangen können. Selbst heute bei diesem übelsten Hightech-Kram gibt es noch Leute, die tatsächlich noch was mit diesem ganzen Schrott anfangen können.
When I'm installing the GPS units in the electronics, I do think of a lot about where it's going to end up next or who's going to handle this over time. In the last year, I've seen items move into countries I've never even visited. It kind of blows my mind away. And it blows my mind away even further that we have this technology accessible to a small nonprofit like the Basel Action Network, and it's affordable to a certain degree.
Reliable data on the international trade in waste is very poor and cannot be relied upon because we're not collecting data for those waste streams. So what you have to do if you really want real information about waste trade is you have to get your hands dirty. You have to get out there. You have to follow the containers that leave recyclers and disappear. You need to have people in the ports, like in Tema Port in Accra, Ghana. You need people in Hong Kong. See the stuff coming in, follow it where it goes. You need to also think about using tracking devices. This is something we're starting to do now. This is what you have to do to really find out what's going on.
Okay, so it should be this line of equipment here. Well, not in that order, but...
Es ist halt nur so, dass kein echtes politisches Interesse, würde ich es mal nennen, darin besteht, das aufzudecken. Ne? Das ist so wie mit Steuerfahndung. Am Ende des Tages stellt sich der Staat selber in die Quere und sagt, nee, die Player, die lässt du mal schön in Ruhe, die sind nämlich groß und reich. Und die sind einflussreich. Und deswegen dürfen die ruhig ihren Scheiß weitermachen.
Sure. Yeah, grab the tags and we can check the numbers. So that's the order you're going to do them in. And just let me show you a tan recycling. You're probably going to see a sea container right here. Keep driving right to the end. You're going to look to your left, and what you're going to see is this here just full of e-waste. Gaylords everywhere like that. And probably a sea container here because they got a forklift ramp.
I moved up to Seattle. I did all my schooling in political science, minor in legal studies, and then public policy and master's degree. And then I happened to come across this position where it's finally coming together. I feel like I can make a difference. Most people assume that they're doing the right thing by recycling, but they don't really understand all the little ins and outs, and then recycling industry essentially wanting to profit in their own way as well.
Mhm. Ja, ich denke, das C-Wort wird hier nicht mehr genannt, ne?
Where do you recycle?
I'll get it for you, but let's start recycling.
Okay. Hello. I was told to come in here. It was sitting in the storage and needed to get rid of it.
Did they give her the phone? It's for your personal use?
Yeah.
What do you know
I
of?
just kind of need to get rid of it.
Huh?
I just needed to get rid of it, recycle it.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So we have now deployed about 200 trackers, and we're following them all over the earth now. So I'll show you a little more. When we go to the map function, this is the one that went from Michigan, as you can see. It went ... across the country on a train and sent out of Long Beach, California, went to a port in China, and then went down to an area in China which is really remote, really rural. And if we zoom in on that, you see a blotch of points, which means every 24 hours it was reporting. If we take that into the satellite map, you can see that all of this is in a farm scrapyard in the middle of a farming community in China.
Out of the box.
Pan, du fragst dich immer, wie viel von dem Müll im Meer ausgekippt wird. Ja, das frage ich mich auch. Eigentlich will man da nicht drüber nachdenken, oder? Die Frage ist ja, also gerade so Metalle, denke ich, sie haben halt noch einen Restwert. Und da die Arbeitskraft sozusagen im Prinzip umsonst ist, ne? Also die Schwarzen in Afrika, die das einfach nur auseinandernehmen für einen, ne? Da bezahlst du ja quasi nichts dafür, für die Ressourcen, die sie da noch rausharvesten. Das lohnt sich dann wahrscheinlich tatsächlich, das nach Afrika zu schiffen.
Basel Action Network's 200 trackers, 62 went abroad to developing countries. But there was one country missing from the list of destinations.
It's a big mistake to presume that Ghana is the extent of the problem. Ghana is easily accessible. You get off an airplane with your camera, you go there in 20 minutes, you can look at it. That's why it's getting featured so much, but don't think for a minute it's the only place it's happening on Earth. We know for a fact that it's far larger amounts of being dealt with similarly in China, India, Pakistan, other countries in Africa, etc. So it is a widespread problem. It's an economic-driven problem, so it isn't going to be confined just to Ghana.
The Basel Action Network trackers revealed that broken CRT monitors left with Atan Recycling had been exported to Taiwan. Under Taiwanese law, it is illegal to import broken electronics.
We may not have managed to test for everything, but the 5 elements we did, they are known to have negative health outcomes, particularly lead and mercury. And the truth of it is, I generally was expecting high levels of heavy metals because of previous studies in Akboblushi or other reports in similar sites in China, for example. The routes by which those heavy metals can reach humans are multiple, so it can be harmful to inhale, to ingest.
Also ehrlich gesagt, der Schaden an den Menschen ist wahrscheinlich nicht mal das Schlimmste für den Overall Impact der Biosphäre, ne? Sondern der Schaden, der da an der Natur angerichtet wird, ist wahrscheinlich viel verheerender. Also es ist ja nicht so, dass jetzt hier irgendwo im Kapitalismus diese Menschen hier einen besonders hohen Wert haben. Aber selbst für reiche Kapitalistenländer wird es irgendwann zu einem Problem. Also dass Schwarze irgendwo sterben an Krebs, das ist überhaupt kein Problem für reiche Industrieländer. Für reiche Industrieländer ist aber irgendwann ein Problem, wenn diese Länder so unbewohnbar werden, dass da keine Schwarzen mehr nachwachsen können. Die sterben dann für uns. Ne? Also, weil wir haben ja gesehen, da wo diese Halden ist, da ist auch keine Natur mehr und so, da ist nichts mehr. Ne? Und diese Halden, die werden ja nur noch größer jetzt. Also, die breiten sich ja aus. Wir produzieren ja mehr Müll und so.
To have skin contact, and it's very harmful to any women bearing children because heavy metals can affect the development of embryos.
So aside from the working, it's a place of community. There are women selling food, sometimes with the babies wrapped around them, children playing around if they're too young to be at school or if they're in a break from school. It's not only the working that takes place there, it's a social environment. As soon as we got our results, I showed them to Dr. Tony Fletcher, who is an epidemiologist working between Public Health England and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, where I also work.
My particular focus over the last few years has been on chemical exposures, particularly in contaminated land and drinking water. But I heard specifically about Agoblushi from Markella when she showed me these alarming results of soil contamination there. It's very worrying. Because they are vulnerable individuals and they
Ja, es ist der Konsumerismus vor allem insofern, weil ja wirklich absichtlich darauf geachtet wird, dass, wie gesagt, das Recycling nicht funktionieren kann, dass Reparaturen nicht funktionieren kann. Es soll ja absichtlich nicht auch nur ansatzweise irgendwie effizient sein und nachhaltig, sondern es soll absichtlich nicht nachhaltig sein. zum Zwecke der Kapitalakkumulation.
They are not informed about the potential hazards. So, I mean, one is they may not have other opportunities for work, so they're kind of trapped in having to work in that.
Habt ihr eigentlich mit meinem letzten Video mit diesem Schaubild, habt ihr dazu jetzt eigentlich geweibt? Weil für mich war diese Erkenntnis, es mal so explizit auszusprechen, dass der oberste Knopf sozusagen eine Zielfunktion ist und nicht irgendwie ein Mensch. Das hat schon was gebracht, oder? Also, wenn man sozusagen sich so darstellt, ne, dass wir sozusagen diese Pyramide haben, aber oben ist jetzt wirklich mal immer irgendeine Kostenfunktion. Das ist irgendwie cooler, ne? Weil dann wird einem klar, dass man wirklich ein kleines Zahnrad im Getriebe ist.
That area, but the other thing is because they have no idea of the risks, then they can't take steps to minimize exposure because they don't know what the risks are associated with these compounds. I mean,
Wir haben doch eh keine Wahl.
They're not gonna. You don't perceive these metals as being something that you taste or anything. The levels of exposure here, it's enough to lead to chronic risks to health without you perceiving it's happening to you. You've got two different sorts of risks involved here mainly. There's neurological damage, risk to your brain, to your nervous system, particularly strongly from lead and mercury, which are among the contaminants. And then there's the risk of cancer, which you get from arsenic, from chromium, and from cadmium.
The 5 elements that were tested are all known to cause human health problems. They include cancer, respiratory problems, developmental defects, and neurotoxicity. The concentration of these elements in Agbogbloshi was sometimes over 100 times higher than the soil outside the site.
But nobody gets health screened in any way here.
Once a while, the Ministry of Health comes in and does it, but it's purely voluntary.
Purely voluntary?
Yeah, purely voluntary.
And what do you know what they do? Like, do they take samples?
They take their sample, they check for their vital stats, blood pressure, sugar level. But
they don't test?
We don't have a national toxicology laboratory. We don't have national toxicology laboratory.
We don't feel good looking at their condition economically, looking at their condition of health, because most of the things that we do here negatively, we, first of all, it comes to us, we start getting the negative effect before it even exposed to other people. Therefore, we are not happy about what is going on. It looks as if our situation is like you have a daughter that is dying, you don't have money to take your daughter to the hospital. So you just be confused and you don't know what to do. That is the situation in which we find ourselves.
So people who might get ill here, though, will they go to that hospital or
well,
no?
They might go to, there's a clinic nearby where they'll go. But again, because we don't have, and these people also, I mean from the lower ebb of the poverty, like may not have the financial resources to do the kind of tests that will help to identify their illness. So maybe if they complain of headache or vomiting, which are all symptoms of poisoning, the doctor may treat them for malaria, which is quite prevalent in Ghana. And so the person may end up dying because the problem may not be malaria problem, it could be poisoning.
Tomorrow is 11.
As far as Africa goes, with this tracking project, we have not seen one go to Africa yet. And that's interesting because when I first went to Lagos, Nigeria in 2006, we saw a lot of material from the US in Lagos. Ghana seems to have a special relationship. A lot of the people involved are expats from the UK or from the former colonial relationship. So a lot of the material is flowing from the UK and to a lesser degree from mainland Europe, Netherlands, Germany. But Ghana doesn't seem to get a whole lot from the US, at least according to our current tracking.
Because the USA has not ratified the Basel Convention, its companies can export e-waste without breaking federal law. In the European Union, which has ratified the convention and implemented several other agreements, only working electronics can be exported to developing nations. Despite this, the export of e-waste still happens.
Und deswegen haben sie das mit diesen Schulen gemacht, die Holländer, ne? Weil sie einfach sagen, das ist ja noch, das funktioniert ja noch. Wir haben hier auf den Zettel geschrieben, wir spenden das diesen Schulen. Dass dann hinterher rauskommt, das stimmt gar nicht, das ist Elektroschrott. Spielt keine Rolle, weil auf dem Zettel haben sie alles richtig gemacht. Und es geht niemand runter und überprüft diese Scheiße, ist doch klar.
When my boss bring them from the maybe UK, comes straight to the port. My general manager has to do the processing with the paper, these things. After, then they'll bring them to our various shops. So we just offload them to the warehouse before we bring them to the shops. Sometimes, not all. Maybe if it's about 50, we'll get about 40 of them working, and some will be just we have to check them. So that place will be my duty to roll check and then repair them. They all come from the UK, yeah.
No one knows how big the extent of the criminality is because they don't fill in returns to say, I've just engaged in 10,000 tonnes of illegal activity or whatever it might be. We believe there's something in the region of about 100,000 tonnes of waste that's illegally exported, waste electricals that are illegally exported each year from England. The people we're targeting are criminals, and they're doing it for money. And there's a whole range of people involved in the criminal activity, from those people that think it's a fast way to make money, through to people that are seriously organised in terms of funding other criminal activities. We have got a good industry in this country and in Europe for recovering electricity.
Ich finde es immer so krass, ne, dass im Kapitalismus immer so geframed wird wie, ja, das ist jetzt hier aber wirklich böse, ne? Es gibt überhaupt keinen Unterschied zwischen diesem Business und dem anderen Business und so. Das eine ist einfach staatlich legitimierte Kriminalität und das andere ist staatlich nicht legitimierte Kriminalität. Und kriminell ist natürlich Terminus, den ein Staat definiert, ne? Aber für uns, umgangssprachlich, sollte es ja eigentlich sowas bedeuten wie, ja, moralisch sinnvoll, nicht moralisch sinnvoll oder was auch immer für eine Metrik wir anlegen. Nachhaltig, nicht nachhaltig, ne? Zum Zwecke der Maximierung der Survivability der Biosphäre oder halt nicht zum Zwecke. Aber ja, so ein Schwachsinn, ne? Es dient so oder so der Kapitalakkumulation. Und am Ende geben sich die auch einfach die Hand wieder. Das ist ja ein Theaterstück, das die da aufspielen, dass die irgendwie gegeneinander sind und dass die einen kriminell sind und die anderen verfolgen oder so ein Schwachsinn. Das ist doch alles Müll. Das ist wirklich eine Geschichte.
Waste and turning into valuable
nach die Babsi, nach die
Unfortunately,
Johannes.
some people take the money pretending that they are going to recover the material and then they might masquerade it as other goods and send it to a place in the world where it is cheaper to dispose of.
Ja, dasselbe, das ist dasselbe wie mit der großen Plastiklüge-Doku, die wir vom NDR gesehen haben, ne? Wo sich der Plastikmüll immer noch weiter runtergecycelt wird, bis er irgendwann in Indonesien oder so landet.
To put this to the test, eLife deployed 4 trackers hidden in broken CRT monitors. They were disabled by an independent electrician.
We're here today to put some tracker units in some of these televisions and find out where they go. A couple of years ago we did the same kind of project. We put tracker units in some TVs. We disposed of them as the right way, took them to a proper company. And the company then should have disposed of them in the right manner, but they didn't. They put them in containers and exported them. Then we tracked them all the way from England to Nigeria, and we found the trackers were in lakes and ponds and in the flea markets to be sold for parts. That's one thing we weren't expecting at all.
Warum nicht? Verstehe ich nicht.
4 drop-off locations were established around London. Of those 4, 3 CRTs were taken to recycling centers and scrapped according to regulations. The 4th, however, traveled elsewhere.
How are you doing?
No, no.
I just want it recycled. It's broken.
Yeah, good man.
Yeah?
All right. 50p. You don't need that. Do you?
I'll let you have it. It's,
all right.
It's broken, though.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Yeah?
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Within a month, it had arrived in Tema Port Accra and then was transported to the La Paz district, a location known as a marketplace for used European goods.
Hey, River, UK. UK. Oh, wow. I see. Okay. That's it.
2 of the eLife team found the CRT on sale outside a second-hand goods shop.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so I've seen the truck. You can see the truck. Yeah, that's obviously it.
It was sold to them for $15 US, and it was still broken.
Not everything that gets diverted off for reuse still works, and this is where the problem comes in. In this country, we're absolutely rubbish at repairing. Hardly anyone gets anything electronic repaired, whereas if we go to those other countries, the repair's quite easy. So there's no waste and not waste. That's purely art slant on it. It's perfectly legal and environmentally and socially wise to reuse computers and any other electricals as much as possible. So in parts of Africa, for example, 80 to 90% of the population can't afford new. So if we're going to hit Millennium Development Goals, if we're going to have IT involved in any development, we need people to be able to buy these goods, and they can't buy new.
I think because the electronic products that are coming as second-hand, we have a perception in Ghana that those ones are quality than the brand new equipment. And sometimes it is true. Most of the electronic gadgets that come from the Asian region are mostly substandard. And so they bring that quite easily. And so people tend to buy second-hand more.
Direct from Warrington, UK. My dear customer, I want to assure you that you don't have anything to regret buying from Umejesi and Sons, Nigerian Limited.
Hello, Rolf.
Yeah, and we believe the videos are working perfectly, right?
They're working. We tested, we make the test this morning.
So the customers that you're selling the goods to now, what assurance are you giving them?
We are giving them the assurance that
Danke,
we are
Rolf.
giving them the best.
Der zweite Monat ist der wichtigste, habe ich mir sagen lassen.
And see that everything is intact. You can see nothing. So the whole thing are in perfect order.
Whether exported legally or illegally, one issue that cannot be denied is that at some point all electronics will become waste. When this happens in developing countries, the lack of recycling infrastructure means e-waste cannot be disposed of safely. As it cannot be shipped elsewhere, it ends up on sites like Agbogbloshie.
In Ghana here, we have some people who goes around, buy them as scraps. They two pieces them. So we don't know what they use it to do, but they will buy it from us at a cheaper rate, and then they take it away. Normally they come to the warehouse because when we checked and it's faulty and we can't do nothing about it, we just put them somewhere. When they come, then we just give it to them. We can't just leave them in our garbage, like we can't send them to the refuse site. Definitely they also go there to pick them out. So it's important they come around and then take them away. There's no other way, unless the scrap dealers come around to take those things.
I think producers of electronic equipment must be responsible for what they produce. I mean, there's no justification to find Dell.
Tja, das ist natürlich eine naive Vorstellung, ne? Legal gesehen sind sie das nicht. Staaten definieren ja, was kriminell ist. Haben wir ja schon geklärt.
Keyboard line in Agbogbloshie. When we are talking about circular economy in UK, there is absolutely no justification. Why?
Ja, Verantwortlichkeit, exakt.
Dell, HP, Toshiba, etc. in UK and in Europe and in America, they are responsible for the end of life of their products. But when it comes to Africa, we leave it for our poor young men to dismantle and poison themselves and everybody else. I mean, I feel so bad to see these multinational companies and their
Sie scheißen dir ins Gesicht. Ja,
keyboards lying around Agbogbloshie. This problem in Agbogbloshie didn't start yesterday. At least it's been running for almost 10 years now. Why is there no concrete action by the producers to try and also solve this problem?
Ladies and gentlemen, please find your seats and silence your devices.
Welcome to the future.
Herrlich.
Millions of decisions, big and small.
Sowas Schönes.
The countless realizations of new ideas. The immeasurable number of choices that all happened in this moment will shape the world as we know it tomorrow and for years to come. New technologies are giving us the power to not only navigate the chaos, but to define the future itself.
Sowas Schönes. Feinster Bullshit.
So this is the big welcome desk and the directions, and we have some of our Dell World Help concierge folks. It's a big event, and people get lost. They need to know help, and so these are some of our Dell employees who are helping out. So here we have a Game of Thrones exhibit because our customers Spinifex and Machiavision do the graphics for Game of Thrones. The force is strong with this one.
Ja, das ist so schön. Das ist alles großartig, ja.
This is our Legacy of Good area at Dell World, and it's one of the best spaces because it really highlights what we're doing to better the planet and to make our products more efficient for customers.
Jetzt.
Dell is leading the way in terms of discussing the circular economy and what we can do to make technology more earth-friendly. And it's something that you'll find David Lear and Teresa Thompson talk about every time they have an opportunity to speak in public and with customers. So I feel like Dell is really leading the way in
Na klar, es ist eine
how we talk
Pressesprecherin.
about the circular economy being important for business and important for our environment.
Ich meine, das ist immer so ein Ding, ne? Weil ich denke immer so, solche Leute wissen exakt, wirklich. Die wissen, dass sie lügen, ne? Die wissen das. Das ist wie Soldaten. Die töten andere. Das wissen die. Die wissen, dass es falsch ist.
It's really been interesting
Die machen,
to watch
die tun nur ihre Pflicht.
Global focus now, both on climate change, but also on materials. And how much do we have and how much do we need? So if everyone consumed at the rate Americans do today, it would take 5 Earths to supply the materials for that. We don't have 5 Earths, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So we really have to rethink as a world how we manufacture and use goods. So we have a goal by 2020 to collect 2 billion pounds of electronics. Globally right now we're at 1.4 billion pounds. And just with the Reconnect program, since we launched that in 2004, we've collected 427 million pounds. We're the largest recycler globally, geographically, in 78 countries and territories. So we take it very seriously. If you think about it and you see those pictures of the e-waste and you see a box that says Dell, that's our owner's name. We don't want that in any landfill.
Also?
Goodwill is a not-for-profit organization that meets the needs of individuals that have a struggle finding employment. Dell approached Goodwill in 2004 to create a free consumer recycling program for used computer electronics. The Goodwill had the infrastructure, and it is a win-win. We have the environmental impact, 0 computers go to landfills, as well as the benefits for Goodwill, where we get to generate revenue for the mission by refurbishing and reselling the electronics that can be sold. This is what a gaylord of raw donations looks like. In here we have some monitors. Here's a Dell laptop, well used and decorated. From these raw donations, about 80% are going to go directly to recycling. Only the best of the best go to be evaluated for reuse and refurbishing. The Reconnect program does send it to an environmental partner assigned by Dell and audited to ensure responsible recycling, nothing goes into a landfill, and no waste goes overseas.
Okay.
Because we'd seen all of the e-waste that was being dumped overseas. Dell took a leadership position to really push for the banning of e-waste export internationally from the United States.
The problem with recycling is that on its own, it is not a solution. The process is complex and expensive, and lots of valuable material is still lost. To reduce the amount of e-waste, we need to rethink how we design and manufacture our technology.
I really believe that the current linear take, make, dispose economy is a model that's no longer fit for purpose. We make most of the electronics around us today in a predominantly linear fashion. We've set this up in the Industrial Revolution, and it's a very efficient process. We get a lot of very high quality electronics at quite an affordable price, really. But no consideration has been paid into what happens to the products at the end of its life. So these products can rarely be fixed or repaired or remanufactured, which are kind of key components to moving towards a more circular model.
Ja, das haben wir schon
We
verstanden.
define the circular economy as an economy that is restorative and regenerative by design.
Products are being manufactured and optimized for the purchasing decision. And when people go and they look to buy things, we're comparing features. We're not comparing lifespan. There's a path for manufacturers to create products that are compelling, that are useful, that push the state of technology forward, that also can stand the test of time. So if we're going to talk about a circular economy in the context of electronics, it has to be around repair and reuse. That's an area, if we can extend the life of a product, we can build a circular economy. But we really need to de-emphasize recycling, because recycling is the least important part of the loop. We've been so frustrated with the state of the industry and with manufacturers' complete unwillingness to solve this themselves that we said, okay, if you won't design a solution, we'll design the solution for you. And we're going to open source your hardware to you. We're going to take your products, we're going to open them up, we're going to show people how to take them apart, whether you like it or not. And some manufacturers have said, hey, this is great, but most of them have either stayed on the sidelines or actively tried to stop us. So when a new product comes out, we get our hands on it, we take it apart, we figure out what the process is to repair it, and then we start writing repair instructions. I have an Apple Watch here, and in this case it was really challenging to figure out how to take it apart because there's glass, and we had to actually use heat and an X-Acto knife to cut a gasket around the edge of it and get inside.
Ja, klar. Die Dinger sind extra so gemacht, ne?
When we get inside, is buried deep in the bowels of the Apple Watch is the battery. If there wasn't the battery in here and you wanted to go to recycle this, you could just throw the whole thing in the shredder. You could take the watch band off and throw the rest of it into the shredder. But the battery causes a safety problem because if there's any charge in this and you run it through a shredder, it will ignite the dust that's in the shredder and it can cause an explosion. And no recycler can spend 5 minutes worth of their paid laborers to get the battery out of a watch that maybe has 50 cents in raw material value. It is possible, if you buy one of these, to have the battery replaced or to replace the battery yourself, but it's not by any means easy. You have to know how to carefully pry this whole thing up, unglue it, get a replacement battery that Apple won't sell you from somebody like us, and swap it out, and then very carefully glue the whole thing back together again. It's a tedious process. I think it's possible for manufacturers to design
Scheißprodukte halt, einfach. Klar.
Fairphone is doing a marvelous job of building a modular phone that has a lot of advanced features. It's comparable with any of the top current Android phones, but it's easy to repair. You don't need any screws to fix a broken screen. You can get in, you can swap out the camera if you want to upgrade the camera with a better camera. This is the sort of design that we need to see. And you've got a startup in the Netherlands showing that it's possible. This is fantastic. We need more manufacturers to take a cue from them.
Ja, aber er glaubt halt irgendwie daran, dass bessere Produkte sich durchsetzen, ne? Huch. Er glaubt daran, dass sich bessere Produkte durchsetzen würden. Aber warum sollten sie das tun, ne? Das ist doch gerade der Clou. Kasualisierung funktioniert ja. Wir beobachten ja, dass Kasualisierung aus der Wettbewerbsdynamik folgt. Nicht andersrum. Von daher, einfach nur bessere Produkte anbieten, wird es nicht bringen.
You need to create a different reality than we have right now to be able to solve all the problems. So why focus on all the problems? Well, we focus on the problems.
Ich würde sagen, Smartphones müssen generell abgeschafft werden. Smartphones sind auf allen Ebenen eine Pest. Sie sind nicht nützlich. Der Schaden, den sie anrichten, überwiegt bei Weitem den Nutzen, den sie haben. So einfach. Das ist wie mit Individualverkehr. Der muss einfach sterben. Das ist Schwachsinn. Man braucht eine Kultur dafür, die weiß, dass das Müll ist. Und dass man diesen Schwachsinn nicht haben will.
Supply chain to create change throughout the whole industry. And how do you do that? By creating a different kind of thinking. And in that sense, Fairphone is part of a bigger thing, I think. So we've been very successful in the sense that when we...
Ja, also dieser ganze Prozess, es ist ja nicht so, dass diese Smartphones jetzt irgendwas lösen, was wir vorher nicht gelöst bekommen haben. Es ist nur Kasualisierung. Es ist klein, es ist handlich, jeder Volldepp kann es benutzen. Es kostet aber übelst viel, diese Kasualisierung möglich zu machen. Und es macht alles kaputt. Der Schaden ist enorm. Psychologisch, gesellschaftlich, alles leidet darunter. Es macht alles kaputt. Der einzige Nutzen ist, dass irgendwelche Volllappen nicht mehr, wenn sie auf den Bus warten, nicht mehr nachdenken müssen, sondern die ganze Zeit wischen können. Das ist der einzige Nutzen, den diese Dinger haben. Und das kostet unendlich viel. Ich sag ja, die einzige Metrik, die dabei optimiert wird, ist Kapitalakkumulation, sonst nichts. Das ist Schwachsinn. Diese Scheiße, die muss einfach sterben.
We started, we were just, we were set up as a campaign. But at a certain point, we figured out, to really be able to change, we need to be part of the economic system. And that's also the moment where we said, if there's more than 5,000 people that will buy the phone, we're going to do it. And the fantastic thing that happened then in the crowdfunding was that we sold over 10,000 phones in 3 weeks. And just to give you some numbers, that's 3.5 million euros of crowdfunding in just 3 weeks. And we had it on our bank account. We didn't know how to make a phone. That was a bit of a panic situation, but we saw that people really made that statement.
The mission of Fairphone as a social enterprise is by building our phone, we want to create a more fair economy. A fair economy, that's a huge...
Ja, das ist so wie grüner Kapitalismus. Ich sehe es nicht. Ich fühle es nicht und ich sehe es nicht. Ne? Sie greifen da einfach sie versuchen den Kapitalismus von innen heraus zu transformieren zu irgendwas, was er nicht sein kann. Ich meine, es löst ja überhaupt nicht das Problem. Also es löst ja nicht das, okay, es ist dann vielleicht, sagen wir mal, man hat ein Produkt, was man irgendwie reparieren kann. Aber das ist noch nicht das Bottleneck. Das eigentliche Bottleneck ist, dass es ein Produkt ist, was eigentlich niemand braucht. Das ist doch schon mal ein Problem. Und dass diese seltenen Erden halt trotzdem irgendwo herkommen müssen. Also nur wenn man es reparieren kann, heißt es ja nicht, dass dadurch jetzt irgendwie die Ausbeutung weniger wird, die trotzdem an der Natur und an den Menschen stattfindet. Wie kann der Individualverkehr sterben? Naja, indem man halt Public Transportation macht. Public Transportation ist viel effizienter, es skaliert. Je mehr Leute an Public Transportation teilnehmen, desto effizienter wird es, weil die Pro-Kopf-Kosten einfach mal mit 1 durch n skalieren. Das ist doch klar. Also, ja, Individualverkehr muss sterben. Das ist das Dümmste, was wir uns überhaupt ausdenken konnten. 2 Tonnen Stahl bewegen, um eine dicke Oma zu bewegen. Was für ein Schwachsinn. Ja, aber wenn du spontan was transportieren willst, dann ist das nicht Individualverkehr. Ich rede von Individualverkehr wie das, was wir haben. Wir fahren mit dem Auto zur Arbeit. Täglich. Wenn du mal was Schweres abholen musst, dann gibt's Carsharing. Das ist klar.
Word that's so intangible, you cannot really overnight change the whole economic system. So what we've done is within our own value chain, we have identified 4 action areas that we continuously want to improve on a social and environmental aspect. Those 4 areas being mining, design, manufacturing and life cycle. For example, in mining, and the first priority in there is how to come up with alternatives for the currently infamous conflict minerals, being tin, tantalum, tungsten and gold from Congo and surrounding countries.
Jetzt lass sehen.
So by investing and sourcing from mines that are validated conflict-free, we hope to come up with alternatives for Congolese miners to be able to work in these validated green mines instead of working in mines that are run by rebel groups.
One of the main flaws of the design of smartphones now is that they are designed to be very beautiful in the shop, but not so designed to, let's say, survive the life that we give them. So we try to solve that with this integrated case, which
Also Moment mal. Ihr Vorschlag war jetzt einfach, wir müssen dafür sorgen, dass die Ausbeutung legal ist, oder was? Erinnert ihr euch an den Anfang der Kobalt-Doku? Da war dieser Typ, den wir schon mal in einer anderen Doku gesehen hatten. Mit dieser Worker Cooperative, wie er es nannte. Und das war auch nur Ausbeutung. Könnt ihr euch da noch dran erinnern? An diesen Typen aus dem Kongo? Der diese Geschichte erzählt hat, dass bei ihnen alles richtig nice ist? Ja.
gives a much better resistance as well. Another flaw on phones normally is that we'll break our screens, and normally we have to go to a shop or lose it for a couple of days. With Fairphone 2, we have 2 pins here that you can open, and you can just remove the screen. What we've done with Fairphone 2 design is isolate all the electromechanical components. And what that means is all the components in electronics that have a movement, if you want. So a camera has a focus that has to focus. A speaker has to vibrate. A USB port has a connector coming in and out every day. So all those electromechanical components are the ones that break faster, let's say. For instance, if my camera would have a problem, then after some diagnosis has been done, I could just get a new camera, and with a simple Phillips screw, you would be able to just remove your...
Richtig, in der Kobalt-Doku gab es diese Unternehmensberatung, die Zettel ausgeschrieben hat, ne? Für faire Kobaltförderung. Richtig. War das nicht mit dieser komplett peinlichen Frau, die das erklärt hat? Und die so richtig dran geglaubt hat? War das nicht die wurde extra dafür angestellt? Und die hat es nicht gecheckt, dass sie nur sozusagen eine Zettelträgerin ist? Die keiner, intern nimmt die keiner ernst in der eigenen Firma. So war das doch, oder?
Your camera.
In a couple of years' time, I'm almost 100% sure that the main industry has a lot of these notions of circular economy integrated in their product management, product design, product services, and product end-of-life management.
So if we are talking circular economy, then these are things we should never, ever, ever, ever discuss. We shouldn't think that plastics are cheap. And for that reason, we can just dump them in Africa.
Ich finde das auch immer so krass, weil Rechte würden ja hier die ganze Zeit argumentieren, die Schwarzen sind selber schuld, ne? Dabei ist deren Armut ja systemisch bedingt und gewollt. Die haben ja keine Möglichkeit, nur mit Mindset und mehr, was weiß ich, Sit-Ups morgens, sich da rauszukämpfen. Ne? Das ist ja nicht drin. Die sollen ja da gerade den Grind machen. Die sollen ihr Leben opfern, dafür noch so ein paar Metalle da rauszukriegen aus dem Müll. Dafür sind die gut. Dafür kriegen sie ein paar Cent. Das ist der Plan, ne?
And leave them here. You know, all these plastics that we see there, from television sets, from computer monitors, are gone. I say they are gone.
Weil es ist ja auch so, wenn in Afrika irgendwann mal irgendwo eine Regierung demokratisch gewählt wurde, die jetzt mal wirklich was machen wollte für die Bevölkerung, kam sofort die CIA und hat sie weggeputscht. Das ist immer passiert, ne? Dann hat die CIA halt irgendwelche Wichser bewaffnen lassen und hat dann da einen Bürgerkrieg gemacht. Das haben die immer so gemacht. Es ist einfach herrlich.
Forever. The world may never recover.
Es ist ein ganz fantastischer Albtraum, den wir hier beobachten können.
The circular economy thing becomes mere rhetoric if we don't put back some of these products into the chain. Because we think once it is out of Europe, out of America, that's it, our problems are solved.
Was essen die da? Fuck.
The biggest problem, I think, that
Irgendein Müll aus Plastiktüten, ja?
stems from the fact that manufacturers have never thought of the whole life cycle when they design something. So they do not consider recyclability, what to do with it when it dies. And society, which has scaled things massively by consumption, has an immense problem on their hands taken collectively.
I look at Agbogboshi and I see opportunity. I see opportunity to inject some better safety practices and some better equipment. But I also see opportunity to take a lot of ideas from the levels of reuse that they're achieving there and model it over here. I think we tend to spend a lot of time looking at Africa and saying, well, you know, things are terrible in Africa. And we look down from on high and we say, you know, we're better than them at everything. There's a lot of things that the Ghanaians are better at than we are. And I think that there's a lot of things that we should be learning from them rather than going over there and telling them how to do it.
Wie ich schon gesagt habe, DDR-Style.
Technology is changing our society faster than ever before. The rate we build and consume sets new records every year. And as a result, the amount we throw away is also increasing. There are growing numbers of sites where waste electronics are processed unsafely, with dangerous consequences. And Agbogboshi is just one example. It is time to think of a different way. A way for consumers to guarantee their e-waste doesn't end up in places like Agbogboshi. We need manufacturers and designers to supply.
Ja, das wird nicht die Lösung sein. Zeit zum Umdenken, genau. Lass mal jetzt irgendwie dafür sorgen, dass die Sachen richtig recycelt werden. Das ist doch eine Lüge. Es ist original die Recycling-Lüge. Der Plastikmüll-Recycling-Schwachsinn, der funktioniert auch nicht. Und diese Scheiße wird auch immer noch erzählt. Ja, das ist so ein bisschen, dieses Ende hier, das erinnert mich wirklich an das Ende von The Social Dilemma, der Netflix-Doku zu den sozialen Medien, ne? Lächerlich.
Byproducts that last.
Denn ja, wir brauchen unbedingt das Fairphone. Ja, wir haben hier eine Dauerwerbesendung für das Fairphone gesehen. Super. Und vor allem das Fairphone würde es ja auch nicht lösen, weil es ja übelste Volllappen gibt, die das Design vom iPhone geil finden und wie gesagt, ihren Schwanz da dran reiben, garantiert. Das ist so scheiße, Alter. Fuck.
We are not really discussing circular economy because we just found one motherboard lying there. Why do we leave it here? Why do we pollute these children with such things when we can use them properly and put them back into the product chain? Is it deliberate or somebody's not thinking?
I think somebody's not caring, that's it.
Well, then we must begin to care because we are in a global village. You see, it is not a Ghanaian issue, please. This is not about Agbogbloshie. It is not even about Ghana. It's about how we are treating our end-of-life equipment. That is the fundamental issue. If we look at it as Agbogbloshie issue, if we look at it as, oh, Ghana is polluted, we put fantastic pictures in the newspapers, on the internet, and say, oh, Ghana is polluted, please. It is not about Ghana. It's about how, as a global system, we are looking at material scarcity, material conservation. The future of this globe depends on how we all transform this place and make it better so that the material can come back to the production chain. Otherwise, the next generation will not survive what we are doing. This is certainly not sustainable.
Ah. Ja. Natürlich. Natürlich. Ja, das ist genau. Sie haben aus Versehen nicht langfristig gedacht. Das ist so wie, naja, ich weiß, sie war erst 15, aber sie hatte halt diesen Minirock an und außerdem war ich betrunken. Naja, passiert. Ist passiert. Es ist passiert. Sie hat zwar Nein gesagt, aber ich habe ihr halt einfach eine runtergehauen und dann ging's. Passiert ja auch nicht nochmal. Ich habe ja verstanden, es ist nicht gut. Fuck. Natürlich, Zuständigkeit, ja, natürlich, ja. Ja, natürlich, es steht doch auf dem Zettel, dass wir es nicht machen. Sehr ernst nehmen, ja, na klar. Korrekt. Wenn Sie nachhaltig und langfristig denken, haben Sie einen Wettbewerbsnachteil. Das wird hier nicht angesprochen. Exakt. Ganz genau. Sie spielen einfach ein kurzfristiges Gefangenendilemma. Weil kurzfristige Tempovorteile immer was bringen im Wettbewerb. Man nennt es auch Moloch Dynamic. Ganz einfach. Ja, voll. Race to the bottom. Korrekt. Das C-Wort wurde nicht genannt. Danke, Arte. Also. Erstmal gucken wir nach, wie der Sprecher heißt.